My name is Tara Kenchen. I'm President and CEO of North Carolina Community Development Initiative. I grew up in northeastern North Carolina in Camden County. Camden is right on the Virginia border. I got into teaching really by happenstance. Both my mother and my aunt were public school teachers, and they both taught in Berkeley County at the time. So I ended up teaching 8th graders social studies and English. And it's one of the most rewarding things that I've done. So at that time, Berkeley County was the second poorest county in the state. I had never encountered poverty like that, and I think that what you see in school is a reflection of what's happening in a community. I had students who were hungry, what we would call today is food insecure, right? But that they were hungry, that the only meal that they really got was the meal that they received at school. You know, these were just lessons that I learned. I learned that there were some kids who, if we were to go on a field trip and had to pay something that they couldn't pay, so that they would pretend like they didn't really want to go. And certainly if they went on the field trip, they didn't have money to buy anything or buy food while they were on the field trip. Many of my kids that I would take home or see, they lived in really, really bad sort of housing situations that I wouldn't even think about. Many of them lived with, were being raised by their grandparents. Some parents were incarcerated. Some parents were on drugs, and many of those kids just raised themselves. They were a lot of them were little adults. It started to change what I thought the philosophy about homework was, right? Because I had kids who I knew their life situations were so terrible that it was almost impossible for them to get homework done. Here I am thinking that they are, 13 and 14-year-old kids, and they really have this whole life experience that at the time I wasn't privy to going into. I really learned quite a bit, and I think that their environment outside of the classroom really affected their performance, their participation, and their space inside of the classroom. My decision to go to law school was, I fell in love with teaching, and I fell in love with the kids. In 8th grade, especially with the young guys, African-American young men, I would have classfuls of them that I knew couldn't read, and but they would try to work for me. And I remember the last day of school where as students are excited about the last day of school, teachers are excited about the last day of school. And many times I would sit and cry on the last day of school because I knew that some of those kids wouldn't make it through high school. What I saw was kids who didn't have access to the tools that they needed in order to be successful. But that there were so many circumstances surrounding them, and there were so many circumstances in their environment that it made it really, really difficult. For me, all of that really got me to think about, how do you build a community, and what does a community need in order to be successful? And that way I sort of just backed into and fell into this thing called community economic development. How do we provide for a community what they need, and let them be a part of that decision making? Let them have some say in what their community needs. And how do we make investments so that we really have thriving communities? I think that teaching and seeing it through the lens of students that you could see have so much potential, but you knew it was going to be, for some of them, it was going to be really, really, really difficult to reach their potential. And even if some of them did reach their potential, that meant that we left a whole lot of them back. And so we really just weren't giving them the opportunity to move forward. And so for me, that made me think about, what is it that we really need to have a full community? And how do we get there?